I placed a lot of judgment around the idea of failing with anything I did next. There was this self-induced pressure created by a made-up story of the expectation that the quote-unquote world has of you after you sell your business. It's amazing how things get more enjoyable when you don't create a story about what people think and you actually do stuff that just gives you energy.
Hey, co-founders, welcome to Made It with Connor Tompkins, a podcast where we meet with badass entrepreneurs who've successfully exited their companies, discussing everything from the wins and losses of entrepreneurship to the next steps after the exit. To not miss out on these exciting stories, be sure to subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, I'm here with Alex Lieberman. He's the host of the Founders Journal podcast. He's also the founder of Morning Brew and now the founder of StoryArb. Alex and I are going to be talking about Pronovo full body MRI scans and why more people are not doing it. We're also going to be talking about his Plunger backyard game that he released during South by Southwest, and how the CMOs of yesteryear are going extinct and how there's more things expected from marketing professionals. So guys, there's a lot in this podcast. I hope you guys enjoy. Please do hit the subscribe button on the bottom. It does help us out a ton, and I hope you guys enjoy the pod.
There we go.
How's it going?
What's up?
It's been good. This is the Argentinian setup with my little fuzzy mic.
I love the fuzzy mic.
Little light setup in the hotel room. But yeah, how are things going on your end?
Everything's good. Just in Hoboken, keeping busy. I'm actually about to publish tomorrow a new YouTube video about Ezra. Do you know Ezra?
No.
It's have you heard of Pronovo?
No.
Okay, so they're both cancer screening companies.
Yes. Is this where you get proactive screening?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I did a YouTube episode interviewing the founder, and then I did the full body MRI and shared the results from it.
Are you happy you did it?
Yeah, I am very. The only thing that was tough for me, honestly, is given I have a history of anxiety and panic attacks. I had never done a full body MRI before. And have you ever done one?
I've never done one. I've thought about it quite a bit, and I'm on their calling list.
So I'm very happy I did it, but I almost had a panic attack a few times in the MRI because it's just very claustrophobic in there. I just didn't realize how claustrophobic it is because it's that close to your face. They put a cage around your head. There's straps over your chest and your legs, and you can't move.
So when you were talking about anxiety, I was thinking you were anxious about the results or what they might be.
Oh, no.
But you were actually worried about the process?
Oh, yeah. It was while I was in the machine. I was experiencing panic-like symptoms. I was overheating. My chest was pounding. My fingers were getting tingly.
Oh, no. I get anxious whenever I fly. So I get anxious
really?
with motion sickness. And I got into my head, to kick it, I'm going to become a pilot. I'm going to get my pilot certification. And the longer I'm up there, the more my arms get tingly, the more my legs start to tingle. And then I'm I need to land this plane. This is not the right state to be flying in the air. So there's this interview question that I heard in the past. It's what things do you believe that the majority of people don't, right? What's your contrary belief?
It's the classic Peter Thiel question.
Right. And I think for me, it's why won't everybody go get scanned proactively, to see if you have something? And so I asked my wife and our friends who are also doctors, and I'm do you see any downside to this? And from their perspective, they're worried about people saying
false positives.
Right. Yeah. Or overreacting and over-surgerizing things as they see them instead of watching them. So I thought that was interesting with Pronovo.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I guess my view is at least for me, that's not how it actually went down. For example, I can send you my report, but basically there's a scoring system for Ezra, 0 through 5 or 1 through 5. 5 is something's very wrong. You should go to the hospital immediately.
Stop talking to me. Go to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. 1, 2, and 3 are non-urgent. 3 is non-urgent checkup, meaning it's not urgent, but we see something and you should check on it in the next few months, or you should just monitor it. And when you do your scan again in the year, you should see if there's any difference.
It was similar with, we had this dog genetics test, Embark, and we were testing for like genetic health conditions, and there was 160 of them.
Yeah.
But you don't want to trigger people to the point where they're like, my dog has skeletal dysplasia and they're going to the vet. You're just like, hey, like you might want to check out this gene. These type of medications could have like an adverse reaction. And like they also designed a report that goes immediately out to your vet. And so it's good from like a B2B standpoint because...
What company is this?
This is Embark. So this is like 9-10 years ago. They go up against Wisdom Panel. They're still around out of Boston. And it was nice because you were on the good side of the vet. You weren't like raising alarms that didn't need to be raised, but you were also introducing the vet to what is this new thing that like is on the market, and then potentially turning them into an advocate, which I think Pronovo would be good because a lot of doctors don't know what to think about this type of preventive medicine.
And look, I think the whole thesis of the business makes so much sense. It's like stage 1 or stage 2 cancer on average has a 80 to 90% survival rate. Stage 3 or 4 is an 80 to 90% mortality rate.
What a big pivot. Like, what a big swap.
The whole reason full body MRIs were never really considered by like insiders in the industry is because they always cost too much. If you wanted to do a full body MRI 10 years ago, it would cost you anywhere between $10,000 and $40,000. And the whole thing is like they're using it. It actually is an application of AI that makes sense to me, that they're using AI to speed up the time that these scans have to be done. Because the way an MRI works is it runs over your body, almost imagine like a photocopier, and it gets an image of you, but it's very noisy. So it has to keep running back and forth over you to clean up the image. And so they're using AI to basically get a cleaner image faster. And by running the machine faster, it costs less. So right now, their scans cost $1,300, and their goal is to get it to $500 in the next 2 to 3 years.
I was reading this book, and it was talking about AI and medicine. And it was talking about you have radiologists that are looking for cancer in scans, right? And then how does that compare with AI reading the scan, and how does it compare with like a doctor reviewing after AI has reviewed the scan? And it found out that the AI alone did better than like the doctor reviewing what the AI did. Just having purely unbiased information was the ideal state, which is very interesting to see.
100%. And by the way, in this whole business, that's like what a lot of people, radiologists are very fearful for their jobs with this whole type of business. But a lot of people, like the founders of these businesses, would argue that radiologists are going to still be necessary. I personally found a radiologist necessary because, like, as I was going through panic in the MRI machine, I was talking to my radiologist, and if I just had a robot doing the whole thing, I probably would have had a panic attack and would have had to step out.
I want to say thank you for a few reasons. One is you gave me the an introduction to post-exit founders, and that definitely helped.
It's awesome.
I had just stepped down as CEO, and I was like, what should I be doing with my life?
Cool group, right?
It's fantastic. I think you said it was like the most, what did you say?
It's the most valuable community that I'm in. And like, I think the way that I've always kind of assessed value of community is like, if there's 10 topics being talked about in a group, what percentage of those topics are relevant to me? And in this group, it's always like somewhere between 7 and 9 in a given 10 post cluster.
I can't keep up anymore. I have like 100 that I have to go through. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a little bit of a timing thing. Like everyone at that one point after you sell your business, you're not quite sure what you should be doing next. Yep. And we're all just like looking in the dark, trying to figure it out at the same time.
It's actually just like kind of amazing how clearly similar all people's brains are, given like I've just seen this pattern over and over and over with like dozens of post-exit founders I've talked to.
How amazing is that though? Whenever you're like, oh yeah, I'm special. And then you realize you're like,
yep, highly non-unique.
Highly non-unique. And that can be a compliment, right? Like that can be like, yeah, we can relate to each other. We can understand what we're going through. It's awesome. How has Morning Brew changed over the past 2 years? I've seen you guys do a lot of different stuff. You guys have been doing shorts a lot.
In the last 3 years is we got to a point where we were clearly going to hit a ceiling with our newsletters. So We have our daily newsletter, which has, 4.25 million subscribers. We have our B2B newsletters, which are the industry and job function specific newsletters, and they're great. But it's like, as your business gets older, it's kind of like your initial core products move from like, let's call it like seed stage to late stage to like IPO or like private equity style cash flowing businesses. Like, that's how I think about our newsletter business. And so we knew we were getting to that point. And I also think media is just a world where the way you stay relevant is not, you have to reinvent yourself constantly. We tried out a number of businesses that we thought could like re-steep in growth at Morning Brew. We tried out commerce, like selling actual merch to our audience, didn't work. We tried out education, like creating cohort-based courses, worked, but not a big enough opportunity. Like, that also became part of the threshold, is where can we allocate resources such that a new line of business, we think it has the potential to get to at least 8 figures, maybe not in the first year, but in the first few years. And then the other one, the final piece, was multimedia. So podcasts, social content, and long-form video. And I would say it's taken basically 18 months of executing on the strategy of our current chief content officer. Morning Brew Multimedia is like an absolute rocket ship. Like, our Instagram, Morning Brew's Instagram handle is one of the fastest growing handles on, like, from a relative basis.
In a way, we see like the progress, and it's like, oh, Alex is testing out this format, or Morning Brew is launching this thing, and it's been fun. And we're talking to other founders of being like, oh yeah, Alex is trying this thing. This seems to be working pretty well. This seems to get some traction.
I just shared with Morning Brew, there's stuff that hasn't worked. And even in my own entrepreneurial journey, there's stuff that hasn't worked. And I think at first, I think it was very much like an exited founder thing, where I placed a lot of judgment around the idea of failing with anything I did next, because there was this self-induced pressure created by a made-up story of the expectation that the quote-unquote world has of you after you sell your business. Again, it's all just a story. It's amazing how things get more enjoyable when you don't create a story about what people think and you actually do stuff that just gives you energy. But it was like, after stepping out of the CEO role for the brew, I created a backyard game called the Plunge, where basically it was backyard axe throwing. So it was an axe throwing game in your backyard. Instead of throwing axes, because those are quite dangerous to throw in your backyard,
right,
it was plungers. It was plungers and plexiglass boards. And I created it from scratch, literally worked with a manufacturer in China, created the game, and it was great. But for a number of reasons, ended up shutting it down. And, as I reflected on it, there was one part of me that was like, this really like feels like it sucks, because just like to not have anything work out after having a big win with a company made me feel like a failure. But then there's the other side that was like, this was an amazing journey. Like, I think I lost $35,000 on developing this business, but I learned how to do a Kickstarter launch. I created a physical product, which I've always wanted to do. I understand how supply chains work now. I literally have like 3 of these boards sitting in my office. And like, what I'm going to remember when I'm 80 years old is like the story of building a plunger game, and not like this business not working out.
How amazing is that? And please tell me you have like $35,000 in plungers in your garage somewhere.
There is not $35,000 worth of inventory, but we had so many plungers, because one of the things you learn in building a plunger game is physics is a really real thing. And so I learned so much about physics in terms of how heavy the board had to be. But the heavier you make the board had to be heavy, because if you throw a plunger really hard, if it's not heavy enough, the board will move. But the heavier you make the board, the more expensive shipping is, the more that the unit economics of your game goes down. Oh, and by the way, every plunger has a different level of stiffness, the stiffness of the rubber.
Okay.
If it's too stiff, it won't compress enough to create a suction.
There has to be a point when people come by to see your house and you're just there like testing different plunger plunginess.
It was just a ton of fun. And like, I remember you're normally in Austin, right?
Yeah, normally, yeah.
Yeah, like I tested the game during South by, where I came down to South by, and whatever the big park is in Austin, there's like a huge park. I can't remember what it's called. Yes, exactly. And about 15 to 20 people who I just like, I posted about, I'm going to be in Austin at that park at this time to play the Plunger game. And if you guys want to join, come by. And like Sean Frank came by, like different entrepreneurs came by, and we were just like throwing plungers in the middle of the park. And it's just like, it was such a cool experience.
That's a good memory. I think that, I think we both like startup ideas. So I had kind of like a moment when I was doing something I didn't think I would normally be doing. I had this idea for this bath bomb, which is not something that you would normally connect with a guy that did like an outsourcing company or like a dog genetics.
How did you come up with the idea?
So there's this farm in Alabama called 1818 Farms, and they produce like these really good bath products. And one of the things that makes them great is they use like goat's milk, right? With like different types of cream. And so this idea around this bath bomb that makes your skin feel really smooth. And then like, this is where it gets questionable for the podcast, but if you use it with someone else, it tends to lead to more positive outcomes, might be the best way to put it.
It's a natural aphrodisiac.
It's a natural aphrodisiac. You're in the bathtub and you're like, oh, this is nice. And this is nice to do together. And anything that you can do if you're married to increase your odds by 0.5% is probably a massive market.
I love that.
And so we're like, what do we call this thing? We call this like sex bomb, sex bomb, or bath bomb or something like that.
Yeah.
And my friends and I get really excited. We ordered all these supplies from like Alibaba in bulk. So we have like this bulk like goat milk powder, and we're in the kitchen with like scales, and we're weighing like these time-sized bags to put into these like
incredible
bath bombs. So I just imagine you and your family or your friends like figuring out stiffness of plungers and then having people walk in at the wrong time.
Oh, it was the best. And I remember for a period of time, the way that I thought that the game was going to blow up is through trick shot content. So I was for a while trying to partner with like Dude Perfect and other trick shot YouTubers and TikTokers. And I even made trick shot videos myself. Basically, the reason I stopped the game is because I'd put $35,000 or $37,000 in, and we were getting to the point where I had to like make my first run. Like I had to do my first run of games, and that would have been called another $200,000. And I was looking at like, what would my margin be on that $200,000? And it was like not pretty. And the issue is like, this is why I think the game business is so hard, is like you really have to have a breakout success, because most of these things are not repeat buys, right? Like that's why I find something like Spike Ball so impressive, right? Because a single SKU has sold millions of sets. Like you have to get to that level for it to be successful. And then you have to build a portfolio of these like products that you just keep getting wins with. So What Do You Meme was created by the founders of Fuck Jerry, the meme account on Instagram. And let's just say that What Do You Meme was so successful that basically like that is their core business. That's where they put all their attention now. And Fuck Jerry, which was the biggest thing when they started, is kind of just become like this like thing that exists to market their game. But like What Do You Meme is massive.
It's like, we are this like media company but we sell games.
What is a business that we could attach to Morning Brew that would like significantly increase the value of the business? I would basically say it's like Motley Fool. The issue is that business is incredible. They print money, like hundreds of millions of dollars top line, super high margins. But it's also like, nothing against them, but I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable building the business in the same way as how their business was built.
What I like about your content is tone and conciseness.
Yep.
Right? The action items being like really clear and the throughput being very clear. You guys also have like this tonality that makes it easier to read or digest.
I totally agree with that. I think a question I have, and I always go back and forth on this, is would I build a business that gives people stock picks? Like, do I want to be in the business that offers people individual stock analysis and advice? There's one part of me that says that doesn't feel really good, because I think at the end of the day, the best thing for people to do is put most of their money in index funds and never look at it. But then there's the other part of me that's like, whether or not I want people to just invest in index funds, they are going to invest in individual stocks. Like, that is human behavior. So I might as well give them the information that helps them not lose money.
I think we're getting closer now than we ever were before. And then we also have more asset classes.
Paintings, memorabilia.
So like the whole painting thing, that's something that was surprising to me. Have you ever invested in any art?
We have art in our place.
Yeah.
But like I never bought it thinking about it as like
an investment class,
a store of value. No, I bought it as like something that I think looks nice in our home. But I know people are super into it. Who was I was listening to Invest Like the Best, an old episode that Patrick O'Shaughnessy did with Mike Ovitz, who founded CAA. And he was just talking about in the episode, I think he has like one of the largest private art collections in the world. And how he's like currently, he was saying in the episode, he's currently mentoring like 5 or 6 like millennial professionals on how to start building up their collections.
That's amazing to me. But also, isn't there like a tax thing to this? Like you buy the art and then you donate it to like the museum and you get evaluated at one point.
Not for the purity of of creative expression
of the collection. Yeah. And people also do this with wine, right? And I think that's kind of fun. Is there was this guy off the coast of like, here's a black pearl, off of Spain. And like he would get all these like wine, and he would, you have to store it for a certain period of time. So he would put in like a crate and then he would drop it down to the bottom of the ocean floor to like go store for a while. And then he would pull it up and people would want it because as an asset class, and it's kind of cool, right? You have like coral like attached to it and stuff like that.
That's so wild.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was you are a public founder in many ways. One is your company was a media company, but the other side of it is a lot of us, whenever we sell our business, we're kind of poking our head up and we're like, what should we be doing? And there's like podcasting, and inside this post-exit group, there's a lot of us trying to figure out like, what route should we go? How has being a public kind of figure and putting yourself out there, how has it led to some positive serendipity in your life?
I post about my post-exit founder journey and like, trying to refine motivation, purpose, identity, all of these things. I would say I always find that there's a ton of support, and it's led to really valuable conversations with other founders who are going through the same thing. Both valuable because they share kind of their approach with me, but also valuable because they feel alone. They haven't talked about it with anyone, and it finally makes them realize there's someone who's open enough to talking about this that they can reach out and have a conversation with me. So I think that's the positive. The negative is there's a part of me that always wonders, like, should I just go off of social media? Should I just stop creating content?
Right.
Like, how much of this is contributing to kind of like bad habits and old habits of like seeking validation, like doing things in a way that isn't for like my actual fulfillment, but because I think it'll create social currency that'll make me feel belonging and important. So I don't know. It's so hard because I do see so much. I really do love creating content.
I struggle with the idea that there's an expectation around making content. Like if you stop, people might call you out on it or be like, why is the newsletter not out? Why is this video not being produced?
I've been thinking a lot about the different business models tied to creating content. Like I actually think like there isn't a right or wrong, but to me, like the reason I've been thinking about this a lot is, Matt Mullenweg, who created WordPress, and the holding company that sits over WordPress, which I believe is Automatic. And he still has like a WordPress blog. And if you go to it, his website is ma.tt, Matt. And you, by the way, which is like a sick domain. And so you go to ma.tt, and it's like he truly treats it as a blog. And when I went to his website, I just felt like I was transported into a place in the internet that none of us experience anymore. Like I scroll through this thing and it just feels like a kind of unadulterated curation. And so part of me is like, is it even possible for creators who make money from their content to even behave in this way? And the answer I think is no, because like if Matt Mullenweg was to put what I just looked at on ma.tt on Twitter or LinkedIn, it wouldn't do anything, but that doesn't mean it's bad content.
There's a personal side of it and the business side of it. And there's a lot of expectations on, I think, CEOs in general. Like we're not in the CEO seat anymore, but there's an expectation that like you have to run the company, take care of stakeholders, be financially responsible, set the culture of the company. Adding on top a public-facing layer to that is like a full-time responsibility and a full-time job. And so I'm not sure if it's reasonable to expect. I know that a lot of people are expecting their CEO to be that public face for them, and that's tricky.
Yeah. I hosted this dinner last night. It was like we call it like the Challenger Dinner Series. And basically I co-host it with the CMO of General Electric, Linda Boff. And basically it's like half of the people in the room are Fortune 50 CMOs. So we had like CMO of Calvin Klein, Fidelity, Diageo, JP Morgan, et cetera. And then the other half is like basically my curation of who I think are the top 1% marketers in the world right now that are like rising stars. So it was like, Nick Sharma was there, the head of marketing for Mischief, the viral marketing brand, Robin Arzón, the Peloton instructor, like all these really cool and interesting people. And we talked about a bunch of things, but one of the things that we talked about and I'm thinking a lot about is like, we live at a time where it's like, there's this, I just think the whole dynamic around the creator economy is so interesting because on one side, people are obsessed with it to the point where it feels like a tired thing to say now. On the other side, I actually think like there's a lot of hate from tech entrepreneurs who create on Twitter who don't like respect full-time creators. Like I think there's actually a lack of respect. Like I think entrepreneurs and like especially Silicon Valley people consider creators to be like a low status full-time job. And I think the creator economy is going to continue to grow. I think there's almost been this over-indexing where I actually think like companies can still build great brands even if like the CEO isn't attached to it. Those brands just have to feel like they're human.
Yeah.
And so it's like why do I love like Wendy's or Taco Bell or KFC or like HubSpot's Twitter accounts, even though they're from these brands? It's because there's an individual who is hired to run these accounts, and that individual has an amazing voice that I feel resonance with.
How important is that? I mean, did you see that thing, national parks, I think like a year or two ago? Like it almost felt like an intern took control of the channel for like the entire country. And then they were posting these hilarious posts and they were going viral and they're like, oh, this, like someone must have gotten control of the handle. But it humanizes this like institution that's been around since Roosevelt.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And to be honest with you, from a company's perspective, I actually think it's like lower risk because you don't like, you put all these resources into someone creating content and then they leave, right? This is something we think about at Morning Brew all the time. And now I think we've been thoughtful in knowing what the trade-offs are and still thinking that personality-driven content is really important. But I think having a brand that no matter who leaves the company, you still own is incredibly important.
I think a little bit about what you said in the beginning about trying to find the right marketing person for this specific job. Whenever I was running a company, I was like, for a CFO guy, like I want the person that's done like 30 transactions and like lives that, right? And for the lawyer, like I want them to have deal experience. But for the marketer, I could see like a senior position for like the 22, 29-year-old person that doesn't have a lot of experience, or the person that's incredibly agile and lives on Reddit.
Basically, based on the rate of change of the job, that dictates the level of experience that you require.
Yeah. And I think marketing just exponential, right? And getting even worse, possibly. Like it's just like speeding up.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking about bringing in someone to run your TikTok who has been in marketing for 15 years, I think it's a tough decision.
I feel like I need to go to the University of Texas and just set up a table and just be like,
seriously,
looking for a chief marketing officer. Show me your TikTok handle.
So it's funny. At this dinner last night, another guy that was there that he's an Austin guy actually, who you'd probably enjoy talking to. His name is Patty Galloway, and he is like the YouTube godfather. So he's worked with Mr. Beast, Red Bull, Jesser. He is like what my co-founder Austin and I are for newsletters. He is for YouTube. And one of the things he was saying is like, oftentimes the worst YouTube editors are like great, like people who are great, like movie editors or like traditionally trained video editors. And the best YouTube editors, he's like, is a 16-year-old living in the Philippines who is like, who's editing from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then playing Dungeons and Dragons.
That's exactly it. That's what we need to be looking for. Is we need to be walking around the Philippines trying to find the right person. Yeah, because they just consume the content and they know what they want, right? And I usually, whenever I'm looking for a marketing person, I find someone that's like, oh, they have a good eye for design in this area, or they're very good at Google search optimization or SEO. It's so hard to find someone that has coverage over different areas and can understand what they're looking for.
The issue is if like you don't know what tactics are actually going to work, if you go for the point and shoot person, you're potentially hiring for a tactic that ends up not being one that's really meaningful for your business. If you hire kind of the generalist who's like fine at everything, you may end up hiring someone who ends up having to hire people below them. All of a sudden, you're like stacking people way too early in the business. And so it's a game of trade-offs.
That's something that's really hard, is that I love the people that I build businesses with, because in some cases, those people carry on to the next business, right? And those relationships stay with you.
I feel like this is like how private equity has always worked, where it's like private equity firms have like their mercenary CEOs who they always go to. And the reason they go to them is because like they've worked with this CEO 4 times who's done 4 different turnaround jobs. And not only has this CEO done 4 different turnaround jobs, but they have an entire C-suite that is literally built into a Rolodex. Every time they get called in for their job, you know the C-suite you're going to have every single time.
It's probably literally a Rolodex. Like they probably literally have a thing on their desk
100%.
And they call on their team and they're like, we ride again.
You literally just bring back the band every 4 years.
Have you had exposure to the private equity industry since your exit or any of your investments?
Morning Brew was purchased by Axel Springer, and Axel Springer is owned, at least part of the business is owned by KKR. So I've had exposure through that. But to be honest with you, like what I've realized is like my energy always gets sucked when I get later and later stage or to like bigger and bigger companies. And that's not to say like private equity is bad or wrong, but it's like, the more I can keep like my head focused in like the early stages of like building and like getting businesses from 0 to 1 and like working with like co-founders and early team members that feel like a family, I've just realized that like that gives me so much more energy.
We found savings and synergies here, guys.
Yeah.
And they're like,
yeah, like financial engineering is their form of creativity.
Yeah, for
Whereas
sure.
for me, my form of creativity feels way more like, or like for me, in early stage building businesses like from scratch and like finagling them to actually try to get to a place where like they actually work and you've actually hit product market fit, because likely the first product you come out with isn't going to be the product. Like that feels more like art to me.
Yeah.
So I think like science to some people feels very creative. Art feels very creative to me. And whenever I'm doing something that feels scientific, it does not feel like creative expression, which means I don't get energy from it. And so the more that I can spend time on things, generally, I think earlier stage behaviors feel more like art. The more I feel artistic, the more that I feel energized.
I get a kick out of the 0 to 1, like creating something, building the landing page, getting excited about that, the first customers. They're like,
super interesting.
Right. So like, I just need to find someone to help out with that middle. That would be, the awkward teenage years would be awesome. That would be great.
Yeah. Huh. And so out of curiosity, like when you think about just starting anything moving forward, like how do you think about whether you want to be a CEO from day one or put a CEO in place from day one? Like how do you think about any business you build moving forward? If you even want to build businesses moving forward, what involvement do you want to have?
So since we last talked, I started Operator Equity, which is the idea is that I buy businesses and then the entrepreneurs are then the LPs, and then they can invest with me on the upcoming businesses, right?
Sure.
And so that's kind of like the parent company. And
Super interesting. And
we
when you buy those
have-
businesses, do the entrepreneurs stay running the businesses or no?
They do, right?
Got
So
it.
far they do, right? So there's 6
Okay.
logos underneath the brand. And what I like about it is that talking about the 0 to 1 gap between 1 and 2 and then 2 to 3 is that most of the time they have a leadership team in place, right? And so that's kind of like the 2 to 3. It's like I'm helping with 1,000 different stair steps that it takes to improve the 14 different departments to get them to scale and get them to grow. But on the other hand, I have sex ba-bomb, bath ba-bomb in my kitchen, right? And you have your Plunger game, and I can like have an idea from like conception.
Yep.
I can build a landing
Yep.
page. I can do this podcast. I can do, but I can pair it with some of the things I'm folding up into operator equity. Like I bought a marketing company 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that marketing company is going to help empower
Yep.
the rest of the portfolio and help out with building different communities around the different topics that we're interested in. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of fun from that perspective, in that I can do a little bit of both.
What did you find you were drawn towards or gave you energy in the process of like buying this company? Was it the hunt for finding the company? Was it figuring out like the terms that would make it work?
You know that like little piece of joy that you get right before like a piece like snaps into place? Like
Yeah.
yeah, I feel a little bit like that whenever you find a piece and you're like, oh, this is how this works, right? And then
Yep.
this is how this ties into the other stuff that I have going on, right? And so I
Yep.
had invested in this company that does like music lessons across the nation. They were on
I remember you
Shark Tank
told me
season
about
4.
this. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I need to scale and grow this company, but then we also have, there's like this low latency audio piece, and you have to introduce people to the new product. How are you going to do that? You're going to get amazing musicians like Skunk Baxter and like the bassist from Public Enemy, and you're going to work with these amazing people, and you're going to launch this brand in this community. How do you do that? You need a marketing company. And so for me,
Yep.
I was like excited about that. And then I was excited about the team, and the team, like the individual people were so awesome that it made me excited to do stuff with them. Alex, you started StoryArb. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I started StoryArb 9 months ago. And the original thesis for the business was simple, which is that there was a ton of attention at the time going into just like offshore arbitrage businesses in general. It felt like there was this renaissance of it. Like, I feel like it was like less sexy when like you were working on it with Support Ninja, or when like TaskUs originally started, and then like in the last few years it's become super sexy. And I think the reason it's become very sexy is, one, like the VC like money machine stopped, tons of tech companies got markdowns, tons of layoffs, like cash flowing businesses all of a sudden became like a viable path to entrepreneurship without like the risk profile of venture businesses. At the time, short form video agencies were like the new thing in offshore arbitrage. Like, so you saw like Clipped, you saw Viral Cuts, you saw there were like 3 or 4 others where there's a team in the Philippines, really good short form video editors, you can have your videos edited. And it was also big because like we were seeing the fast rise of TikTok, and YouTube Shorts had just come out, etc. And my whole thing about it was like, I think that's cool, but I actually think also those are tough businesses, because my impression was like churn is going to be super high, because like you can't actually, it's very hard to attribute like sales or like business you get from short form video. So my view is like people would kind of cut you off after some period of time of realizing like you can't measure ROI. And then I was like, at the same time, I think the written word is more important than ever before. Actually, Twitter and LinkedIn are some of the best places to actually drive business, and no one's helping entrepreneurs to do this. So that was the thesis. StoryArb stands for Story Arbitrage, and the idea was like there's all these founders who have amazing lessons and insights and stories, but they don't have the time to create on Twitter or LinkedIn, or they don't have the skill to. And so by us having a team of writers and content strategists to support them, we can arbitrage these stories that have never been told in the world. And so we've been around now for 9 months. You know, the business does over $1 million a year. We have a team of 5 internally, and there's been so much learning. And one of the things that I've realized with this business is there's a few things. One is picking the right market really is so important. And actually, in some ways, picking the right market allows you to be a worse entrepreneur.
Yes, for sure. The wave is going to carry you to the shore.
What I just realized with StoryArb is like there's just like unlimited demand for really good personal brand support and also just like content and copy support right now. Like there's a ton of things I think driving that. Email newsletters are still sexier than ever before. Content marketing is more important than ever before because marketing gets more expensive through paid. Personal branding, because like we just live in a time now where every CEO feels like they need to build a personal brand. And then you're seeing the acceleration of it recently with like Zuckerberg going on this, road show of like being a normal human being on camera.
It's like, look at me, I play dominoes. I'm a normal guy.
The beauty of this business is like there's unlimited demand. The difficulty of this business, and this is where I've realized one of the things I love, is the puzzle of going from initial product to the actual product that's going to get you product market fit. And we're in that stage right now. Like we have a product that generated us a lot of revenue, but I do not believe we have product market fit. And I think the big reason is because I think personal brand is a nice to have, not a need to have for most CEOs. I think most CEOs will pay for personal brand help for like 5 or 6 months, and then they will stop. And if that is like the average life of your customer, that means just to stay flat, you need to replace your entire customer base every single year. And that all of a sudden becomes a very exhausting marketing exercise. And so right now we're working on evolving the product to support more than just executive social, because I actually think there are content needs that companies have that are way higher retention than a founder's social. For example, a company newsletter. Another example is company social. Another example is like landing page and website copy. Another example is like customer case studies. And so I think it's been very valuable to see where the initial thesis was wrong, but still have all this demand and figure out how can we harness all this demand and really good writers and really good content strategists and point the product in the right direction. I think I've also just realized that, like, first of all, early stage startups are horrible customers in general. Like, if you can build a business that where early stage startups are not the customer, I encourage you to do so. And look, I love early stage founders, but it's like it is the most resource strapped you'll ever be as a company. And so if you're a vendor of that, it can be a very difficult thing.
If you're helping those founders find product market fit, like, bless you. Yeah. Like, good job.
Totally. And then I think the other thing is that for when your buyer of a product is a CEO or a founder, I generally think there's like 4 points of value you can provide to a founder or CEO to be a sticky product for them. You either deliver some product that is a core part of their job. So if one of the founders is a CTO and you're GitHub, like they're always going to use you. Or like if it's not core to their job, then it has to be something that saves them money, it saves them headaches, or that it saves them time. And that's actually why I think like the offshore executive assistant businesses are pretty good businesses, because I think it saves them time, it saves them headaches, and also, especially, like they can be good in down markets, because instead of paying an EA $150K in New York City, you know, it's way cheaper.
I think you might have changed my life in August when you said that outsourcing was sexy, or you were like, how do you get into sexy business like this? And I'm like, you do newsletters. Like, that's cool.
Which is hilarious, because if anyone said what I said to you about newsletters when I was building Morning Brew, it would have been like, this is not sexy at all. It's like the least sexy thing.
I'm like, well, we have offices around the world, but I actually liked it. I thought it was cool because you work with people in different cultures and you build these like international teams. And so I felt like the weirdo in the corner of the global map.
Things happen very serendipitously, where I actually think a lot of the knowledge you got in building an offshore talent business, as the world gets increasingly distributed and globalized, I think just like the way companies operate moving forward is likely going to be some combination of a little bit of in-house talent combined with automations, AI, and offshore.
This is probably going to be like the Pronovo, where it's like, why wouldn't you do this? Like, why wouldn't you do this ahead of time? Is that when you could just hire in your city or your town, now you can hire in your country with remote. Now you can hire in other countries and find the best talent. And so, yes, there's an arbitrage kind of piece to it, but there's also kind of like this talent piece of it. Alex, thank you so much. Where's the best place for people to go to find you, Alex?
Yeah, so you can find me on any of the social platforms. On Instagram, I'm Alex Lieb. On Twitter or X, I'm Business Barista. TikTok, I'm Business Barista too. And then I have a podcast, Founders Journal. And then, as you mentioned, my two businesses are Morning Brew and StoryArb.
Fantastic, Alex. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
That wraps up today's episode. For more inspiring stories and valuable lessons from successful entrepreneurs, be sure to listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and writing your next chapter.